Nicky Skevich back again with another episode of Tee to Green, once again with Daily Fantasy Winners, of course. And this is for the FedEx St. Jude Classic, a tournament that's in Memphis, Tennessee. And this is a week, again, unfortunately, where I will say if you are somebody who's, maybe new to daily fantasy golf, or you are somebody that only likes to play daily fantasy golf when there's like a bigger edge out there, you think, versus the field, this is a week I would just recommend skipping altogether, or I would just at least seriously limit your bankroll. Well, first of all, there's no FanDuel this week, actually, but the main general theme around that is because there are just a ton of variance factors that go into the results of this tournament every week. I'll get into them throughout the video, but and I'm going to do a normal episode, of course, just because there are a couple things maybe we can look at. But for the most part, this is one of the toughest weeks, I think, to win consistently. Or just to put yourself in the best position to win of giving yourself an edge. This is just one of the biggest variance tournaments of the year by far, actually. In any case, I just want to give you a heads up on that. So no, there's absolutely no problem. It's like anything maybe in sports betting. There is nothing wrong with just passing on a game. You don't have to bet on a game, or if there's a week or a slate you don't like, there's nothing wrong with passing. So I will just give that kind of a disclaimer. But I will give you, obviously the normal stuff here in the video, though, is just as far as some things we can look at. So diving into the tournament, what you need to know about the tournament. This is a very weak field this year, and it's usually weak every year. But this week it is, or this year in 2017, it is a very weak field. It's one of the weakest I've ever remembered coming to this tournament. And the most it's always weak just because it's often played or almost always played the week before the U.S. Open. But it's especially weak this year, I think, because the venue for the U.S. Open, Erin Hills, it's at a course that basically, I won't say none of the pros have played, but like a vast majority, like 99% or like 95+% to be safe. None of them have played before, or never played in a tournament, that's for sure. I'm guessing none of them have played in a tournament before, unless it was like somehow randomly, like some random like fun tournament that had nothing to do with professional golf. And so in any case, a lot of people are playing practice rounds there this week, or just wanting to get there early and get their feet wet on the course and everything like that. So Dustin Johnson usually would play in this field. He's not this week. There's still like a couple names like Fowler and Koepka and those guys, and Phil's in it, but for the most part, this is like one of the weakest fields I've ever seen here. Anyways, the other thing that pops up in here also is in the past here at this tournament, this has just been a tournament where players will just have no problem withdrawing from. Now, fortunately, one of the biggest reasons for this is weather, meaning rain-related, causing delays, and players want to make sure they get to the U.S. Open venue on time and make sure they get the appropriate practice in. That's a usual thing that happens. Luckily, this week, looking at the weather, there is no rain in Memphis until Monday, so that's a very good sign. We'll touch on weather later on in the video, because there is some wind things we might want to look at here with this tournament. But the other thing that sometimes people will withdraw, though, just because it can happen, is if there's like some person that's going to be playing at Erin Hills next week, and or that's already qualified and locked into play that week, and they're playing this week, and the slightest injury thing comes up, like whether there's like a slight little back tweak, or like, their wrist starts bothering them, they will have no problem withdrawing, which is, obviously annoying as for people doing daily fantasy, of course, but obviously it's more understandable, obviously as the player. So this, again, is just another one of those, is one of the many variance factors that comes into play here. So but that's really all there is to know about the tournament outside the golf course perspective, and everything like that. So we'll dive into the golf course, which is TPC Southwind. It is, again, like I said, located in Memphis, Tennessee. It is a par 70 that tips out at 7,239 yards. Pretty average length for a par 70. We've had a lot of average length courses the last several weeks. Just the way it is, I guess. This is a par 70 so we have two par 5s on the golf course, one on each side. There's hole number 3 and hole number 16. Number 3 is 554 yards. Number 16 is 530. Number 16 has a ton of eagles. They're made by players of all driving distances. Number 3 will only see, sometimes, it depends on the weather. Because of the weather this year, and it's supposed to be it's supposed to be sunshine, and the wind probably won't be too bad, generally speaking. We'll probably see maybe like 10 to 12 eagles on number 3, and those are longer hitters or sometimes medium length hitters. Shorter hitters usually don't eagle that, but needless to say, still big picture here, because there's a lot more eagles made on 16 in comparison to number 3. Driving distance isn't that important for the Eagles this week. It always shows up slightly, no matter what the golf course is. I don't want to make this sound like, like there's no correlation to driving distance and eagles. Yes, there is, but that's the case every week. But just in comparison to the grand scheme of things, in most weeks, it really doesn't show up much here. It's only very minimal. So bombers aren't a necessity here for that. But getting into more details about the golf course itself. This isn't a Florida golf course, but it does possess a lot of similarities to a Florida golf course, just in that, A, it's a pretty flat course, but B, and this is the bigger thing here when looking at this from a strategy standpoint, is there is a ton of water that comes into play on this golf course. And I was talking with Danny about this earlier, and he reminded me actually, which was good. This course is in the top 3 of golf courses on the PGA Tour where players make the most penalty strokes, or have the most penalty strokes, if you will. And the top 3 on the PGA Tour there's a pretty big gap between 3 and 4. It's like there's the top 3, and then there's a pretty big drop off. I think this course is number 3 on the PGA Tour. It's either 2 or 3, I forget which, but it's up there. So that just means there's a lot of variance that comes into play here, because penalty strokes equals water, water equals penalty strokes, which equals variance. And so this is a narrowish golf course, so it is a ball striker's golf course, because obviously there's a lot of penalty strokes. You want to have people that avoid it. And the one thing I wanted to, and I'll bring in the wind aspect to here a little bit, is there will be some wind the wind does come into play over the weekend more than during the week. It might come into play a little bit on Thursday, and I'll dive into the strategy at the angle of that as far as the tee time waves in a little while. But I just want to bring that up. The windier it is, usually the variance increases when there's penalty strokes out there, because you can't control as much where the golf ball is going, mid-flight, obviously. So it won't be terrible this year, but there will still be some wind that comes into play here, and the variance will still definitely be high. And so that's pretty much it as far as like the ball striking aspect. Yes, ball striking is important, but there is a lot of variance still to boot on top of it. And these are also relatively easy greens by PGA Tour standards. So putting is a good thing this week, actually, believe it or not. Well, let me backtrack on that. So, but strokes gained putting does show up here some more than most weeks. But now I'll just kind of feed this into the strategy area, into the strategy portion of the video, is that there isn't much that shows up here overall in the statistical area of just what's highly correlated, because there are easy greens, sometimes the good putters will just have a really good week. They avoid, like, the variance works in their favor with the penalty strokes in the water, and they're a good putter, and so they're able to take advantage of the easy greens. But sometimes the good ball strikers do take over, obviously because it is a ball striker's golf course, and then they just have a hot week putting. Like anything can happen on a 1 week sample, and just so you have a lot of different kinds of golfers that show up here each week or each year. You have a lot of different kinds of golfers that can show up each year here, and just in terms of mixing up kind of like what types of golfers are near the top of the leaderboard. The other thing, so like when I was looking at the tournament history here, just for everybody, it was really just quite frankly, it was random and just scattered in terms of like the results people had. I mean, you would see certain golfers that just like miscut, T4, miscut, T47, T8, miscut. Like it's scattered all over the place in terms of like just what kind of results people are getting. And then the other thing I'll also throw into this is, because this is a very weak field, it's also hard to get relevant actions. Well, it's hard to get a lot of relevant information and relevant statistics. Like sometimes a lot of these guys that are playing in this field are guys that haven't played in nearly as many tournaments or relevant tournaments this year, and obviously the strokes gained aspects they factor in. Obviously the tournament strength and the field strength, and that's what the metrics are designed to do. But even though that's the case, there wasn't really anything that showed up very strong in the stroke skiing department as far as like what statistics show up most from a correlation standpoint. So it's really hard to, if you don't have something that shows up in the stroke skiing area, and then you have some kind of irrelevant information because the other PGA statistics don't show, they just measure it on like how you do in a given week, and they don't measure it against the strength of the field. It's just really difficult to measure like which kind of golfer will really do well as far as the weaker golfers. We can look at the odds per dollar, and that certainly helps in terms of the Vegas odds because there are some guys that are mispriced and everything like that. But this is, again, like I said, it is just a very difficult week, really, to find much of a clear-cut edge over a certain strategy standpoint. So the best edge, so I say all this in terms, just to kind of give you the background here, but if you're going to play this week and you're going to do some cheaper GPPs and things like that, what I would my best advice here into trying to get the best edge possible is go with great ball strikers and players with at least decent recent form, while trying to also avoid the highly owned guys. There are some guys certainly this week that stand out quite a bit in the odds per dollar category. So with this week, with like the picks that I do on the forum, I'll probably have a shorter list in terms of the guys I like, but I will probably have a few more names than normal in terms of guys I would recommend fading, just because there are a few names that definitely stand out, and because of the variance this week, I would just not have as much of a problem fading a couple of those like, $7,000, $6,000 level golfers that will be in that, it depends on exactly who it is and where they're priced, but it could be like 10 to 15% owned in the 6K range, or like closer to 20% owned in the 7K range, and everything like that. So I'll have those lists up on DailyFantasyWinners.com in the forum as usual. And so that's really all I have from the strategy standpoint. I'm sorry, it's just a really tough week this weekend. I'd rather just be perfectly honest about it rather than give you bad info. So that comes from my angle. So in any case, so onto the weather. It's supposed to be sunny all week. That's a good thing. Like I said, rain is expected on Monday, which is obviously not a good, which is fine because it's after the tournament. But you never know with weather. Sometimes if the rain does move up to Sunday and then it somehow pours enough to the point where there's a delay, you might have some players that are far enough back where they're out of contention that they may end up just saying, the heck with this, I'm just going to withdraw, and hey, they still get their paycheck. Or at least it's an appearance fee. They wouldn't get paid as much, so it is a little bit of a cash hit. But if they're prioritizing the U.S. Open over their full preparation for the U.S. Open over finishing that round of golf that day, or they're worried that they're going to have to finish up Monday, and actually there is supposed to be rain Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday in Memphis. Now that's like looking far enough down the line that like weather always changes. Who the heck knows? This is probably way too long of an answer just to say the weather should be fine from a rain standpoint, but there is a slight chance if the weather does move up, it could get a little bit weird. So from the variance aspect, but the main thing on the weather is the wind. There are supposed to be just 1 to 5 mile an hour winds Thursday morning and 1 to 5 mile an hour winds Friday morning and Friday afternoon. Just all day Friday, there's like no wind, and there's little to no wind on Thursday morning. Thursday afternoon, there is supposed to be winds more up to like 9, 10, 11 miles an hour. That's not a big deal. Those winds aren't high enough to really make a big difference, and it's not a big enough difference from the 1 to 5 mile an hour range that I just really wouldn't worry about it too much. But I will say this, that just given that the variance that this course really does demonstrate, and that predicting wind in particular is difficult with a couple days out and how much it can actually gust, it may not be a bad idea if you are doing a handful or several GPP lineups to have 1 or 2 or just a small percentage of them, I'll just say that, regardless how many you're making, that are all or mostly Thursday morning, Friday afternoon tee time waves, just so you can avoid that Thursday afternoon, maybe potentially higher winds. And again, I'm recording this on a Tuesday, so we'll look at it deeper. I'll look again at it deeper, and obviously you guys should as well, on Wednesday night, just to see, maybe if that's even necessary at all. But just kind of a little bit of a disclaimer, a little bit of a heads up that you may want to take a look at that for the wind. And so last thing as far as the strategy goes, actually, before we just jump into the picks, I would just skip cash formats altogether. If you're somebody that does cash usually every week, and even if you're successful at it, I still think this is a pretty good week to skip on cash formats just because of the variance factors that I've mentioned here with this tournament. I think it's just really difficult to win consistently. So I would, again, like I said, limit your bankroll, cheaper GPPs. That's just my recommendation. So On to the picks. So we have, how many is it? We have 5 guys above 10K. Basically, Ricky Fowler and Brooks Koepka, yeah, they're fine. They're great plays. Use them in GPPs if you want. But I'll just say, as far as the making the best possible lineup, I think using Adam Scott or Francesco Molinari are your 2 best options. I think their ball striking speaks for itself, and they're a little bit cheaper also, which helps you make a little bit of a better lineup. This is just such a weak field. I really wouldn't mind saving the extra $1,000 from Fowler to Adam Scott, or or 1,500 if you're going down to Molinari at 10.5, and those guys' ball striking really is as good as anybody in this field. So I have no problem. Just those would probably be my 2 top choices for the most expensive guys. If you go below 10K, Kevin Chappell at 8.8K, I do like. I mean, Daily Fantasy Winners putting tool definitely likes him, which is a great thing to use, obviously, every week. But I will just say also, be careful with Chappell a little bit, only in the aspect of he's going to be owned a shitload. I just said, I don't consider that word a swear word. I just don't. Sorry if that offends anybody. I just whatever. Anyway, so he'll be on a ton. In any case, Chappell, he'll be owned at least 25%, maybe even up to 30%. It'll be that high just because of Chappell's. Obviously, he's very good. He's got a pretty good recent form despite his just kind of an okay finish at the Memorial. But the reason why Chappell will be owned a lot is because he's kind of the last golfer of that good 9 to upper 8K range, and because a lot of people will probably be trying to save money, and there isn't anybody else that really jumps out a ton in that 9K range. I just see a lot of people gravitating toward Chappell at 8.8K, and he's been getting owned quite a bit over the last couple of tournaments he has played in. And so that's just kind of heads up. I'm not saying to fade him. That's definitely not what I would do, but I would just say just a heads up, he's going to be on 25 to 30%. I still think you can use him, and that's perfectly fine because he could certainly win the tournament. But so that's just a kind of a warning on Chappell. But in any case, and then as far as somebody else though that I do like that's just below 10K is Russell Henley at 9.8K. I actually think his ownership is going to be lower than a lot of people think, because I do think a lot of people will gravitate toward Mickelson or Molinari and Adam Scott there, and they'll also have no problem dropping a little bit below Henley to go to guys like Daniel Berger or Kevin Chappell. Like I said, I just think Henley might slip through the cracks a little bit in kind of that 10 to 15% range, which is kind of nice given how weak this field is. And Henley is definitely somebody who fits this golf course, and all these guys I'm mentioning really do fit this golf course. That they're all very good ball strikers. Kevin Chappell is particularly in the iron department, certainly, but I will just certainly say that Russell Henley will probably slip through the cracks, and he's somebody who usually does well on Florida courses and that more accuracy type of thing. So, in any case, that is it for the tournament aspect, of the video. I just wanted to say a couple notes though, as far as looking forward here with Daily Fantasy Golf. The U.S. Open is next week, so I'll definitely have a lot more on that from the tee to green aspect, and I'll have much better information for you that week. And then hopefully we can get Max back on for a second video as well, like Max and I did for the Players Championship. My hope is to do kind of a video with Max like that for the majors, the players, obviously, like we did it, maybe like a WGC later on down the road, something like that. So that'd be, I think a lot of people enjoyed that, and we did some good things with that. So that was just the first thing. Just heads up for the U.S. Open next week, and that. The second thing is I'm probably going on a short vacation here in a few weeks. I have not had a real vacation in 4 years. I'm pretty stoked about this. And so I've had little minor I've had to go do certain things that they're not real vacations. So I just say this only that I'm not exactly sure when the dates are going to be. And if it'll affect Tee to Green at all. It's possible I might end up missing a Tee to Green episode, but I'll still try and be on the forum and helping you guys out a little bit in that regard. It's just I just don't know exactly when the dates are going to fall. It won't be during the tournament. I know it's going to be. It'll probably be around July 4th. It'll probably maybe potentially affect the. What would it be? It would be the Greenbrier over in West Virginia, or it would be the tournament before that, which I believe is the tournament in D.C., which is the Quicken Loans National, I believe is what that one would be. And so it would be one of those tournaments where Tee to Green might get affected, or it'll just be a little bit of a watered down version, something like that. I'll know more later on down the road. I'm just giving you a heads up. There will be a week coming up where it might just be the format might change a little bit. Let's see. The third thing, strategy videos. So yeah, I'm running a little low on ideas for a strategy video. Obviously, FanDuel changed their format last week for the Memorial Tournament, which is just, it's different. It's pretty much the same thing, except you don't have rounds 1 and 2. It's just you have 8 guys trying to make the cut, obviously. And other than that, I think pretty much everything is the same with FanDuel as it was before. And so I would like to wait a little bit longer on doing a FanDuel strategy video, only in that I'd like to just take a look at a little bit more at like the ownerships that people have been doing and kind of the strategies and that. So I'd rather give you some better information after I learn a little bit more about it and see how people are kind of reacting and taking their strategies to it. And so again, the strategy videos are all for you guys, obviously, and I'd like to do strategy videos that you guys find interesting or that you find useful and informative. And so I'm running a little thin on ideas just because I'd hate to kind of redo things that I've done in the past, whether it be this year or last year. Maybe a couple things I could kind of update from last year's videos that, maybe because of how Daily Fantasy Golf has changed a little bit, that, maybe some of the older videos don't quite necessarily 100% apply to what it would be today. So I could maybe do something like that. But for the most part, I'm running a little thin on ideas. And so anyways, please let me know on Twitter or at Nicky Skevich on Twitter. Please let me know in the forum at Daily Fantasy Winners. Those are the best ways to kind of get in touch with me as far as some ideas as far as that goes. So please let me know. And I say this because, again, like if you've been with me with Daily Fantasy Golf, I usually only do this from the strategy standpoints and all this in the Tee to Green episodes through August. Once we get to football season, I'm focusing on football, and that'll probably be again the case this year. I will try my best to extend the Tee to Green stuff through September until the not the President's Cup, the Tour Championship. I will try and do that because that would overlap football a little bit. But because I really, we here at Daily Fantasy Winners, and I in particular want to ramp up the NFL content, did not get to do as much as I wanted to do last year. I should have more availability in terms of doing that this year. And so I would really like to focus more on that because as much as I think people do, I hope, like the golf stuff that I'm doing and it's helping them, there are a lot of things I think I'm doing in the NFL area that's just as useful, if not more, actually. And so anyways, that's kind of the thing there. So I just say this in terms of the strategy video ideas. Please let me know because I'm probably only doing Tee to Green videos for at least the next three. We're probably less than 3 months away from taking the break on Tee to Green, and so, but I will be back. By the way, yes, and I'm not leaving for good. It's just a halt. I won't be doing the very end of the PGA season this season, and I would not be doing the fall portion of the 2017-18 season. But once we get to the SBS Tournament Champions 2018, then I'm back up and running as usual, and so football seasons come to a halt. So, in any case, so just please let me know about strategy stuff. If you have any questions, of course, about this week, you can always hit me up at Nicky Skevich on Twitter. Daily Fantasy Winners is on Twitter at DFantasyWinners, and then we always appreciate the likes and subscriptions to our YouTube videos and the YouTube channel, of course, as well. And so good luck, everybody.